Okay, friends, I couldn't resist this one. This is a very interesting idea from the Sefer Chofetz Chaim al Torah on Parshas Bereshis regarding the following question. What is a deeper discipline? Torah or Jewish history? What is a deeper chachma? So you say, how can you're not even allowed to ask that question. Well, I won't ask it, I'll just tell you the answer. Okay, here we go. This is the Chofetz Chaim al Torah. Says the Chofetz Chaim on the opening Rashi, you may have been familiar with it. Rabbi Yitzchak lo yitzchak laschas haTorah ela mechodesh tazel lochem u'matam pasach bebereshis mishum koyach ma'asav higid la'amai. Rabbi Yitzchak said the Torah did not really need to begin with the stories. It could have began or should have began with the first mitzvah. But rather, it began this way because koyach ma'asav higid la'amai. I saw last night in the Sefer Reb Chaim Falaji called Tchila L'Chaim. It's called Chaim Techila. That because the Torah begins with Bereshis because of Koyach Ma'asav Higid La'amai, the opening pasuk of Bereshis has Koyach Oisiyos, Chavches Oisiyos. Okay. Says the Chofetz Chaim, Etzem HaKavana B'Nesinas HaTorah HaMitzvos HaDinim. The objective of giving the Torah was that we should be Mekayim Mitzvahs. Shenitnu L'Tzarfes Yisrael, that was given to purify Klal Yisrael. V'al Zeh Nemar, in Parshas B'chukaisai, Eila HaChukim HaMishpatim HaTorahs. HaSipurim HaMaisiyos, the stories, Hemarak Ladas Hanhagas Hashem in Briyosav, V'Mabriya Kula. The stories are only to know how Hashem accords himself with his creation and with those who he created and with creation in general. Therefore, if the purpose of the Torah is to give us mitzvahs, it should have began with the mitzvahs. And yet, the Torah didn't begin that way. Instead, it begins with stories of creation and how Hashem accords himself with the Bria. Says the Chofetz Chaim, Ula ma kasav oimer, ma gadlu ma'asecha Hashem. As great as creation is, me'oid amku machshavaisecha. The way Hashem accords himself with creation is even greater. Gadlu ma'oid masei Hashem, kolomer habriya ba'atzma. Very great are the deeds of God. In other words, creation itself. Shenivru yesh me'ayin. V'chala mitzvahs achukim shabatorah. Kavanosam gedoyla ma'oid. If the Chofetz Chaim would not have said this, I don't think anyone could have said such a thing. The Torah is very great. But there's something deeper than that. Aval yoiser amku machshavaisecha. Deeper are God's thoughts. Hainu oifen hanhagas habriya kula. The way Hashem runs the world is deeper even than the Torah itself. Yoiser amoik mehabriya atzma. V'lachein hischila ha-Torah b'sipurei ha'maisiyos shel briyas ha'olam. Therefore, the Torah begins by telling us the stories of creation, the Seder in Yoneim, and what occurred with Adam and Gan Eden and Cain and Hevel. Lilamedcha shebezeh tzarech ha'adam lizboinen b'yoser. As much as you need to think about Torah, you need to contemplate how God runs the world even more than you think about the Torah. V'chol hayoidea lachshoiv tekufos u'mazolois ve'enoi choyshev. If somebody knows how to think about, so to speak, the runnings of the universe and does not, alav hakasav oimer ve'espayal Hashem loy yabitu. They are indicted that they didn't think about God's deeds. V'chol sipurei ha'maisir shebetorah hein hanhagas Hashem im habriya v'im kala yitzurim. All the stories in the Torah are how Hashem accords himself with creation. V'zois ha-Torah amukai minei yam. This Torah is deeper than the sea. Va'adam ma yavin darkai. And man how can he understand the ways of Hashem? In other words, Chofetz Chaim is saying that the depth of Hashem's hanhaga with the Bria is even more profound than the mitzvahs and the Torah itself. Which means that the study of the stories in the Chumash require more analysis than the Dinei HaTorah. And which also would mean that to study how Hashem interacts with creation and the world and history is a deeper wisdom than the Torah itself. So the question is, so why don't we spend time learning Jewish history and instead we spend time learning the Torah? The answer is because it's so deep, we're not going to necessarily have a correct grasp of what Hashem's message to us is. But the stories in the Chumash, which Hashem himself recorded, that requires more study than the Dinei HaTorah. And therefore, look at this in the bottom. So a Rebbe once asked the Chofetz Chaim if it's kedai to tell children Gedolim stories to inflame their hearts in Yira Shamayim. Upam sha'alu echad me'hamalamdim im kedai lefanav l'saper talmidav sipurei ma'isiyos misefer limud charedi echad shematarasai lahalev libais hatalmidim le'amuna b'Hashem u'lechizuk yisodos hayahadus. Is it a good idea to tell the students stories from Jewish storybooks? The Chofetz Chaim said no. No. V'hatshuva hoysa shlilas. The answer was in the negative. V'tama yinumukai haya ki kol ma shadarish l'chizuk ha'amuna v'yisodos hayadus loichas ha'torah al amala. Anything that is needed to strengthen Amunah, the Torah did not take pity from including it in the Chumash. V'hechnisa kol sipurei ha'maisiyos im ha'avos v'ha'imais. The Torah included all the stories about our forefathers, Sipurei Yitzias Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Masa Haman v'Haslav, Haficha Sadoim v'Amoira, Beluei Kairach u'Kiyotze. Hakol ka'ashel hakol, Hericha HaTorah b'Sipurei ha'maisiyos. The Torah speaks about at length. V'lu ha'yitzach b'oit Sipurim. If we also needed other fuzzy stories, Betach lo'haya HaKadosh Baruch Hu nimna milhachnis b'sefer HaTorah hazeh. Then the Torah would have included these fuzzy stories. Shenitnu lanu al yidei Moshe Rabbeinu. The fact that these fuzzy stories are not in the Chumash, it means they are not needed. I'm just telling you what the Chofetz Chaim says. Don't look at me, okay?
What about Navi?
Navi also. Also Gemara. I would include all Ma'amorei Chazal. But one should not mistakenly think that if they spend a whole Yom Tov reading books about books that are not part of Chazal, that they were learning Torah. They were not learning Torah. You're allowed to relax. You're allowed to relax. It's better to read that than to read about, I don't know, other things. Bottom line is the Chofetz Chaim was not a proponent of telling over stories of L'chayra means stories of tzaddikim to... By the way, he brings over here that if somebody feels a hisrashlus in Amunah, he should read Sefer Bereshis. And the Chofetz Chaim, in his old age, every day after Shachris, he learned Sefer Bereshis. By the way, B'chlal hoya Sefer HaTanach Munach kol yamav be'amtachas hatalis utfilin shalai. Tanakh, the Sefer Tanakh was always in his talis baitel. Mikol mu'ura shenirsham b'divrei HaTorah v'anavim ha'ksuvim lamad. Any story recorded in the Tanakh he learned from, v'limeid, and he taught eich l'choynein oirach ha'chaim shel klal Yisrael, how to establish the right path for the Jewish people. Divreim hitzisu ba'eish Kodesh lahagid la'amenu es ha'shalem lasos. From the words of the Tanakh itself, it inflamed a fire in his soul to teach Klal Yisrael how to act. Umehem shav tanchum l'cholev nishv v'nike v'unachei ruach. Anyway, so that includes the Tanakh. Anyway, it's been real. Have a good day, everyone. On Monday, we'll continue in Hilchos Sefer Chofetz Chaim. See if you could get a hold of Chofetz Chaim Sefer Avas Yisrael. It's a kuntras. It's a small pamphlet. It's only 5 prakim. We'll try to keep it brief. Okay, we'll try to keep it brief each day. Kol tov.